I erupted the social media sphere talking about track limits. So essentially what got me frustrated was Friday night, I get back to my hotel room in Florida. I have just qualified 10th, felt pretty successful, happy about it, had dinner, get back there, doing some notes, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to check in on the USGP. What happened in qualifying? So I turn on the qualifying highlights, and it gets to where suddenly I'm watching the end of this, and Max Verstappen wins the pole. And I'm like, oh, cool. By 0.005. Great job. Then they go, that lap has been deleted. I think, okay, he cut the course. He had to have cut the course through the S's. Something has gone wrong here.
You're being disingenuous.
No. Hold on.
You already knew.
I know.
You already knew.
No, I did not. I didn't fully know at the time because I'd seen some stuff on social media, but I wasn't like fully sure. I then watched them go to this replay, and I see a car that goes through turn 19 at Coda, which in NASCAR, we run all the way out there where it's really bumpy in the offside, in the runoff, but it's not really even that much better to be out there. I see a car that goes onto a curb on the exit of a corner, now a 150-mile-an-hour corner, I'm assuming, for those cars, goes onto the curb, goes back on the asphalt, and yet was deemed to be outside of the track limits because its left sides were on the other side of a white painted line on the tarmac. This was one of the most unbelievably stupid things I've ever seen in my life. And if you want to know more of my rant on track limits, you can go on our social medias and you can see where I condense it down to a minute and a half. And I'm not going to rehash that whole thing. But Landon, the drivers then asked Formula One, can you please make the line bigger? Because we can't even see it. Because this is so dumb that since it's paved on the exit, we're now deciding that track is actually just the asphalt section and it is no longer the curbing or was it beyond the curbing like it would be in other tracks that have grass. They wouldn't even say anything. But because there's asphalt on the other side of the curbing, we're now deciding the track ends by these white lines. It makes my blood boil. It goes against every fabric of being a professional race car driver. And I did find that one of the greatest qualifying laps in the history of Formula One for the pole, Imola 2000, the year 2000, by Mika Hakkinen, where he drops his right sides in the grass through the top chicane and still gets the pole, would have been a lap deleted in the current rules that we have in Formula One. That's how dumb this is. Now, I do want to get your opinion on this, but before we go any further, hold on. I do want to point out that Josh did find that before the qualifying session that I watched, which I watched the highlights, Martin Brundle had some pretty incendiary things to say about the idea of going over these track limits. He said basically about the idea that they painted the white line more. He said drivers are deep inside the cockpit. They cannot hardly see the white painted lines that are supposed to be judged at 100, 150, 200 miles per hour. So basically that's why they made the white line bigger. He said this is a track that Indycar let the drivers make the track up and frankly looked ridiculous in turn 19 because they were running so wide, which means you're 100 meters closer to the marshals, the crowd, and then the track was designed for while carrying more speed. You can't just let the drivers make the track up, but we have this frustration of these drivers having to judge if they're exactly on that white line or not at high speed with a relatively big racing car. If you carry more speed through the corner and going wide, you're gaining an advantage. He goes on to list a series of options that other tracks have, like at Monaco, you have walls. At Abu Dhabi, they have a drop-off on the exit of basically turn one. And then you obviously have grass and gravel. This, to me, this whole thing is just so ridiculous because we're talking about keeping race cars within white painted lines for no reason because he thinks it looks ridiculous to use asphalt. What is going on here, Landon?
I think this all started by deciding that everything needed to be paved for safety reasons. And so I understand that. And when you have different racing series racing at these tracks, I think MotoGP riders would probably rather slide across asphalt in their leathers than they would flip through a gravel pit with, or grass or wherever where their bodies can grab, they can, whatever. So, I think that it's just, and it's also safer for us too. It's easier to slow down. I mean, gravel's nice because it stops the car pretty quickly, but it's hard to get out of gravel. It's messy, and you have to throw a caution or whatnot. But I don't know. I know this is just something that started as safety, and now decades later, you could say, we're seeing the unintended consequences of something where it's like we're arguing over the dumbest thing in the world. We're just creating an artificial racetrack. We're just creating an arbitrary racetrack, right? We're painting lines to create a racetrack, not creating a real natural racetrack, and allowing the drivers to have creativity and use their courage and whatever. I don't know. We're saying, you have people that are like absolute track limits purists saying race within the white lines, and it's just like, that is the dumbest, lamest assignment I've ever heard of in motorsports. I get it. I was like, okay, we'll do what you say as sir race director, but it's just like, that is stupid.
It is because it goes against the very idea of what it means to be a race car driver, which is to push. And this video I have I explain all this, but it's basically to push the physical realm to the possibilities, what's possible within physics. Like that's the whole thing we're trying to do.
Out there? Like I mean, you're still you're still doing that with painted white lines, right? You're pushing it to the limit of physics, to the limit of that white line, but it's just like, it's not compelling, right? Like watching a racing driver take a car to its limit all the way up to the grass, or all the way up to the point to the wall where like the penalty is damage to his car, or an end to his race, or the penalty of losing the lap, and like the car dipping a wheel off track and then spinning out, or just losing so much momentum that he's going to lose 5 positions, or he's going to lose that half a second or half a tenth, or he's on a pole run, where now it's just like, oh, you can go over the white line and nothing happens to you other than the computer deletes your lap. Like that is there's nothing really compelling about that for 8-year-old Landon, who was inspired by racing drivers.
Yes, you just nailed it. You just conceptualized what I've been trying to say, which is this idea of like, wow, I didn't even think about it this way. That it's not interesting seeing a race car suddenly decide that there's a white line it cannot cross, right, on the X of a corner. But it's really compelling to see a race car get its right side tires within centimeters of the grass and be the edge of adhesion, right? I do think the one thing that's funny about this whole turn 19 area at COTA, which has been the problem, is just from running there earlier this year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in trucks, that runoff area that they said the F1 cars would be using, I don't know how many would venture very far out there, because it is basically like a launch ramp in terms of bumps out there.
Oh, it's rougher than hell.
For stock cars, it's hard to use. For them, I don't even think it would be possible. So like, it seems even dumber from that point of view. You know what I mean? Like they wouldn't even be able to go out there. So it's just so dumb. Let us know. In the comments,
and for those that want to say it looks silly to watch, cars go out that wide, like, okay, I'm with you. It does look silly. You know why? Because you made the track wider than it needs to be. And so like big wide racetracks are kind of silly. I think narrow, tight racetracks are compelling and interesting, right? Obviously there's a balance to that, because Monaco is compelling and interesting and cool to watch, but then there's no passing, so there's a balance to everything. But it's just like, for those of you that is just like, oh, it's not cool to watch a car just go wide around a corner, and it's like, okay, I agree, they shouldn't have paved it. or I don't, maybe the next generation of track designers will come up with some kind of surface to put down that has less grip. I don't know.
Well, producer Josh had a good idea. Like, if you look at the green area on the other side of the curbs at COTA, why couldn't that just be actual grass, like a strip of grass that would be basically would be not in your best interest to put your right sides there, right? So you want to go all the way out there or use a little bit more, you're going to end up in grass, but you still have the paved from there on out for MotoGP riders and, for cars not getting stuck. But there is the natural barrier that we've known to be the barrier at most racetracks that are naturally built before the year probably 2000. to be there. That could be an interesting fix to this.
Mhm.
So it will continue.
Who knows?
I will keep fighting the fight for no track limits. I will not stop. I will not be silenced. For all of you out there that disagree with me, you're wrong. And for those of you that do agree with me, I appreciate it. Keep fighting the fight. This is going to go away. And I'm going to say something here that I don't usually say. I have some inside info that I'm not the only one frustrated. And I think maybe a lot of these fans that support it have not noticed that not many drivers have come out in support of track limits. Well, let's just say there's a lot of frustration in the Formula One paddock right now about current track limits and how ridiculous it looks. So just know that you are in the minority if you support these things.